In this week's Parsha, Parshas Terumah, we are taught about the gifts and the materials that were donated by the Jewish people that ultimately led to the construction of the Mishkan, which is the tabernacle, the place of worship that the Jewish people had all the years in the desert and for several hundred years in Eretz Yisrael. And what's amazing about the way the Torah presents this entire project is that instead of Hashem telling Moshe, tell the Jewish people to build for me a sanctuary, and then describe how the donations should be given and from which materials, instead of that, Hashem says, tell the Jewish people to set aside for me a portion from every person whose heart motivates him. It lists all the materials, and then at the end, Hashem says, and then those materials should be turned into a sanctuary, into a mikdash. That's the opposite of what any fundraiser or doer of a project would do when presenting a fundraising opportunity to a benefactor. What normally is done is that the fundraiser says, look, we're doing very important work, whatever the project is, it's really important to help so many people, would you like to give money? They present the project and then they ask for money. But over here, the ask is for the materials or the money, and then the project is presented, which seems very strange. In addition to that, we have to deal with the fact that on the one hand, Hashem says, take for me a portion, and then on the other hand, he says, only from people who want to give. Why not just simply say, take a donation from people who want to give, whose heart motivates him? So I'd like to suggest, based on a childhood memory, a very important insight into the concept of setting aside a portion. My grandparents lived in Philadelphia. We lived in Florida. And as children, we never saw snow when we were growing up. We would visit my grandparents for Pesach, but that was not the winter time. And my grandmother knew how important it was for us, the grandchildren, to see snow because we never got to see it. So months in advance, she decided to set aside in her freezer snowballs. She would go out, gather snow, turn them into snowballs, and put them in her freezer, and then she gave them to us when we came so that we could play with snowballs when we came to visit. That is what it means to have someone on your mind and set aside something for them. Because you care about them, you have a mindfulness towards them, that's what it means to have them on your mind. Now, is that an intellectual process or is that an emotional process? Says the Torah. What Hashem wants, and He's asking from us, is to have that we, the Jewish people, should have Him on our minds. After Hashem gave us the Torah, which is what the earlier Parshas are talking about, we are very much on the minds of Hashem. He gave us His most precious gift. So what we're going to do with that Torah, are we going to live by that Torah? But what Hashem says is, I want to be on the minds of the Jewish people just like they're on my mind. So tell the people to set aside for me a portion, just like these snowballs, meaning that they think about having Hashem in their lives. But only if they want to, because as much as I want it, I only want it if they want it, because I don't want to impose myself on them. Now, that whole mindset is very different than other religions and what people typically think when they imagine God or some power that people are choosing to worship. Usually sacrifice is demanded, money is demanded, service is demanded, and over here Hashem is saying it's the opposite. I don't want the idea of sacrifice. I want to have you on my mind, and I want you to have me on your mind. That's what a relationship really ought to be. And therefore, the fact of a mikdash, of a sanctuary, is secondary to the idea that I'd like you to set aside some snowballs for me when I visit. And what's really amazing here is that the Torah tells us that if, in fact, the Jewish people's heart motivates them, the heart represents the emotional desire that the Jewish people have to have Hashem on their minds, it's not only that Hashem will visit, Hashem will live by them. Hashem will be a permanent fixture in their lives. But the basis of a relationship with Hashem is not because He's demanding from us a relationship. It's because He wants us to want to have a relationship with Him. He wants us to want to have Him on our minds, just like we are already always on the mind of Hashem. For those of us who think that October 7th happened, Hashem wasn't thinking about us, it's the opposite. It's only because we haven't been thinking about how to have Hashem on our minds that we're lacking in this relationship. So God willing, by taking the message of Terumah to heart, by thinking of ways to have Hashem in our mind, whether it's we think about what we're going to do for Shabbos and how we're going to build a relationship with Hashem, or how we're going to learn Torah, or how we're going to improve ourselves, or just literally have concentration when we're talking to Him during the day and when we formally pray. However we do it, if our heart is motivating us to have Hashem in our minds, Hashem will be present in our lives. And with this, God willing, we'll see all the miracles, all the redemption that we need, and the building of the Beis HaMikdash very quickly in our days.